Some transitions in life don't begin with external signs. They don't start with doors opening, opportunities appearing, or people arriving. They begin on the inside as a silent calling no one else notices, yet it keeps echoing as if coming from beyond time. And if you pay attention right now, you'll realize this calling didn't show up today. It has been growing inside you for weeks, maybe months, maybe years. Something in you always knew you wouldn't remain where you were, even if everything around you tried to convince you otherwise. It's as if the kingdom itself has been whispering your name, not to remind you of who you were, but to reposition you into what you were always destined to access. This final episode of the series does not carry the tone of an ending. It carries the weight of a summons. Because before God releases a reserved portion, He awakens the spirit to recognize that the time has come. And you can feel it, even if you can't explain it. You feel it because something inside you is moving toward a territory that is not new. It's simply yours, but you had not yet been authorized to enter it. Today, that authorization arrives, not because you asked for it, not because you prayed the right way, not because you behaved perfectly, but because heaven has decided to release the final unlocking, and when heaven makes a decision, no power on earth has the authority to stop it. Maybe you've reached this moment feeling tired, questioning, trying to understand what is happening. Maybe you've walked through days that felt disconnected, weeks that felt chaotic, moments that made no sense at all. But none of it was wasted. It was preparation. The kingdom will not place something precious in your hands while you're still attached to an outdated version of yourself. What is about to be unlocked requires spiritual maturity, posture, awareness, discernment. And that's why, before the final key, God led you through paths that trained your faith, refined your vision, adjusted your steps, and shaped your capacity to receive without losing. Because what is about to be released is not small. It is not ordinary. It is not temporary. It is a reserved portion, a portion kept as spiritual inheritance, a portion carrying the weight of promise, purpose, and destiny. And you are not hearing this word as someone who arrived out of curiosity. You are hearing it as someone who is drawn in by the Spirit. Now take a deep breath, not to relax, but to align. The atmosphere around you is shifting as you listen. Invisible things are repositioning. Spiritual threads are being connected. Doors are being prepared to open. Paths are being illuminated, and what once felt distant, unlikely, unreachable, is drawing near in the way only God can orchestrate. And before I give you the main revelation of this episode, I need you to do something simple, yet extremely powerful. Write in the comments, "I am ready to receive what was reserved for me." That declaration is a spiritual marking. It is positioning. It is alignment. It is like telling heaven, "I recognize the movement. I accept the portion." Some releases don't happen because you asked for them. They happen because the exact time arrived, the precise minute, the perfect alignment between purpose, maturity, and destiny. In the spiritual realm, nothing is accidental. When God decides to release the final portion, the one He kept reserved, protected, guarded, untouched, an invisible mechanism begins to turn. And this mechanism has nothing to do with human effort. It does not respond to logic, does not depend on natural connections, does not bow to earthly timelines. It responds to purpose. And when purpose reaches its point of maturation, God begins to reorganize everything around the chosen one, even when the chosen one still doesn't realize it. And maybe, without knowing, you have been moved into this mechanism. Look closely. People began leaving your life without explanation. Doors that seemed good suddenly closed. Feelings that used to be comfortable became uncomfortable. Environments that once made sense no longer fit. Dreams began to feel too tight, as if you had outgrown them. What was small can no longer contain you. None of this is coincidence. It is the kingdom shifting you into a level where smallness can't exist, where mediocrity cannot survive, where old versions cannot follow you, where old battles lose legal access, where old cycles can no longer repeat. What you call uncomfortable changes, heaven calls internal alignment. Because before God unlocks the final portion, He clears the ground. And that cleansing is never emotionally easy. Because what is being uprooted is not just a habit. It is an old structure of perception. What is being dismantled is not just a door. It is the platform that supported the former version of your purpose. And God is not only separating you from what no longer serves you, He is separating you for what will lead you into the reserved territory. That strange feeling of displacement, of I don't belong here anymore, of this no longer resonates, of something is shifting but I can't explain it, that is not confusion. That is a signal. When God is about to release the final portion, He begins disconnecting you from everything that fed the old season and connecting you to the atmosphere of the new, long before anything visible changes. Here's the deep key. Spiritual transition always begins before visible transition. You think nothing is happening, but in reality, everything is already in motion. You think you lost your rhythm, but God pulled you out of a rhythm that would have led you to the wrong destiny. You believe you're late, but heaven is saying, I placed you in perfect timing. There are things you only understand when you look back, but there are others you only understand when you finally step into what God reserved for you, and you are standing right at that threshold. The kingdom is silently repositioning you in the way you think, in the way you feel, in the way you perceive, in the way you see yourself, in the way you move. Because the reserved portion is never handed to someone who is still emotionally attached to what used to be. And now, I need to tell you something that will shake your soul. You are not being prepared to receive. You are being shaped to sustain, and the difference is enormous. Receiving is momentary, sustaining is permanent. God does not give a reserved portion to someone who only asks. He delivers it to someone who has been shaped to carry the weight of what they receive. And maybe you didn't notice, but the way you endured processes, survived battles, crossed through dark nights, resisted exhaustion, and remained standing even while wounded. It made you grow in invisible dimensions. Your discernment grew. Your authority grew. Your understanding grew. Your spiritual resistance grew. Your emotional capacity grew. Your vision grew. And when someone grows on the inside, heaven releases on the outside. Now, I want you to declare this with spiritual authority, because it creates space inside you for the next revelation. I am ready to sustain what God reserved for me. When you declare that, you are not asking, you are aligning. And when you align, what was distant begins to draw near. Have you ever noticed that? In the most crucial moments of your life, God didn't ask for your opinion. He simply moved you, sometimes through pain, sometimes through exhaustion, sometimes through silence, sometimes through a sudden direction you never saw coming. Because there are destinies so important that God will not risk leaving them in the hands of your emotional will. He shifts, He separates, He pushes, He closes, He tilts pathways, He bends possibilities, He twists roots, He accelerates tracks, not to punish you, but to protect you from what you cannot see and lead you into what He designed before time existed. And maybe you haven't noticed it yet, but your life has entered one of these spiritual curves. What once was linear now feels unpredictable. What once was comfortable now bothers you. What once was enough now feels too small for your soul. And that does not mean failure. It means growth. It means the environment that held your old version can no longer support who you are becoming. There comes a moment when grace changes location, and when grace moves, everything moves. You no longer feel peace where you're used to. You can no longer remain where you once endured. Know something is calling you, even if you don't know how to name it. You sense you're being repositioned, even if you don't know where to land. This is the point where God ushers you into the place only people in spiritual transition can enter. And here is a prophetic word for you. You are being led into a room where your presence was already written, even though your awareness had not arrived yet. There are environments where only those trained in the invisible can remain, and you are trained even when you thought you were merely surviving. Now pause for a moment, breathe, and let this settle inside you. You are not being pulled into the new. You are being claimed by your purpose. The purpose God placed inside your spirit before you were born is calling you back to the place you always belonged. And when that calling awakens, no person, system, feeling, or circumstance can stop it. That is why some doors closed, because you can't enter the new carrying old keys. That is why some people walked away, because certain connections are not authorized for the next level. That is why some battles intensified, because some forces sense that you are moving toward the territory where your authority manifests. That is why your spirit feels restless, because the new is too close for you to turn back and too great for you to enter small. Now do something that activates your spirit. Write in the comments, I step into the place heaven has written for me. And as you write, declare softly, not to activate your mind, but to awaken your spirit. I accept the kingdom's repositioning. I leave the old. I receive the new. I move with heaven. And now, let me ask you for something that isn't about me. It's about the atmosphere we're building together. If this message is unlocking something inside you, subscribe to the channel. Not as a social gesture, but as a prophetic act of positioning. I connect to environments that activate my destiny, because prophetic environments aren't watched, they're accessed. There's a reason why every time something big is about to be born in your life, seemingly random disturbances start showing up. Nothing is random when your destiny is about to be activated. The atmosphere shifts, the spiritual climate changes, people start reacting in unexpected ways, situations move out of your control, a tension appears even where there was peace before. It's not coincidence, it's a sign. Every time God is about to move you into a new season, the spiritual realm tries to create interference to confuse your perception. Why? Because the enemy is not afraid of what you're living now, he's afraid of who you're about to become. He doesn't fear your current routine, he fears the impact of your future. When you start getting close to the right path, resistance increases. Not because you're wrong, but because you are dangerously close to getting it right. There is something in you that hell could not break, and now it is about to manifest publicly in your life. And that's why suddenly you begin to feel things like a different kind of emotional pressure. Exhaustion without explanation, a wave of doubts you didn't have before, a desire to hide or shrink back, a feeling that maybe this isn't for me. But let me give you a key now, a key that changes everything. Pressure is not proof of defeat. Pressure is proof of pregnancy. You are carrying something that hasn't been born yet, but already exists in the spiritual realm. And what already exists in the spirit always announces itself before it shows up in the natural. You feel it before you see it. You discern it before you touch it. You sense it before you live it. The spirit signals you before the earth recognizes you. And here's a statement you need to declare right now, if you can say it out loud. I am not being attacked. I am being announced. Because when hell realizes you've reached the right frequency, it doesn't try to interfere to stop you. It tries to interfere to delay you. Delay is always the last strategy when defeat has already been decreed in the spiritual realm. Take a deep breath now. Let this sink in. You are not behind. You are aligned. You are not confused. You are being sharpened. You are not being blocked. You are being protected. And I want you to interact with this spiritual moment. Don't move past this as if it were just another video. This is a portal. Declare with conviction. No resistance will pull me off the path God has written for me. Declare it as a decree, as a claim of ownership, as spiritual positioning. Every word you release makes room for what belongs to you. And now, before we continue, I need to remind you of something with love and seriousness. Subscribe to the channel. Not for me, for you. Because when you connect to prophetic environments, you don't just receive, you begin to walk in a different atmosphere. There are people who merely follow content, but there are others who connect to what unlocks them. Decide which one you will be. Breathe one more time, prepare your mind and your spirit. Because what I'm about to release now is deep. It's a key that explains why God hid you, why he isolated you, why he kept you in silence, and why the next move will be public. It's incredible how, right when something big is about to happen, the atmosphere around you starts to shake. It's not coincidence, it's spiritual reaction. It's the invisible realm recognizing advancement before you even notice it. And here's a truth that needs to hit your spirit like a flash of light. Every time God decides to move an important piece in your story, the spiritual atmosphere reacts before you see the movement. That's why suddenly your mind feels heavier than normal. Thoughts you already overcame try to return. Internal voices try to slow you down. People who never reacted start reacting. Situations that were peaceful begin to stir with turbulence. This is not delay. This is announcement. Hell always tries to create noise when it senses heaven releasing new direction. And here's a sequence of spiritual declarations to activate your perception and reorder your internal atmosphere. Say them with presence. I reject every interference trying to confuse me before my next season. My mind is aligned with what God is releasing, not with what the enemy is suggesting. What heaven has decreed will not be interrupted on earth. I walk the path, the Spirit. prepared, conscious, awakened, and established. No pressure paralyzes me. Every pressure prepares me. Feel that. Don't just hear it. Let these words move what was stuck inside you. Now breathe deeply, because you need to understand what's actually happening. The resistance isn't coming against your present, it's coming against your future. And that's exactly why you cannot step back now. What God is building in you is far greater than the temporary discomfort you feel. The enemy knows he cannot stop what God has already decreed, so he tries to exhaust you. He tries to distract you. He tries to make you believe it's all in your head. But it's not imagination, it's spiritual perception. Now I want you to declare this with conviction. I do not retreat. I advance, always. My story is not upheld by human strength. It is upheld by divine purpose. I access what was previously held back, because I am aligned with what has already been released. I advance into what God has written for me. Every word you declare pushes your story back into the right alignment. There's a detail almost no one notices when they're standing inside a spiritual turning point. Heaven does not begin with noise. It begins with alignment. Before anything moves around you, something is established within you. Before doors open, the spirit is repositioned. Before the answer appears, perception shifts. And that is exactly what's happening right now. Not with someone else, with you. It's as if God were gathering every fragment of your story, every piece you thought had no purpose anymore, every chapter you believed was already closed, and rearranging all of it to form a picture that is only now beginning to make sense. You're not misreading. You're not imagining too much. You're not exaggerating. You are discerning a real movement, a shift in the spiritual realm that began even before you asked. Your spirit has already sensed a truth that your mind hasn't fully translated yet. Something is changing, and it's not external, it's structural, because God isn't just changing your path, He's changing who you are on that path. And this part, this silent transformation, is one of the most delicate works heaven does in the life of someone chosen to advance. Think about it. There are people who only understand promises after they see them. But there is another type, rare, set apart, uncommon, whom God trains to perceive before it happens. And that group carries the transfer code. That group is positioned in places logic can't justify. That group carries the weight of the invisible before manifestation. And listen carefully. You are part of that group. Nothing in your life was random. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was out of place. Even what you thought went wrong was rearrangement. Now do something with me, not as a ritual, but as positioning. Place your hand over your heart and declare firmly. I align myself with what God is building inside me. The invisible is shaping my next step. I walk with discernment, not anxiety. I accept the construction heaven makes in silence. Feel the shift? That's spiritual repositioning happening right now. And I want you to participate in this movement, not as a spectator, but as someone being prepared to carry what many could not withstand. So do this. Write in the comments, I advance with heaven. This is spiritual agreement. It's when you write in the natural what heaven has already decreed in the unseen dot. There are moments in life when everything seems to change its texture. It's not exactly an emotion. It's not a coincidence. It's not just a passing thought. It's as if the air around you becomes heavier, as if a subtle signal moves through your spirit saying, pay attention. The atmosphere has shifted. And exactly that is what's happening to you right now. Suddenly, conversations that made no sense start connecting. People you couldn't discern begin to reveal themselves. Situations that felt stuck begin moving in unexpected directions. And deep inside, you begin to sense that you're being carried toward a place you didn't ask for, but that has always belonged to you. This isn't intuition, it's a summons. You're not just walking, you're being led. And there's a massive difference between the two. Those who walk choose their steps. Those who are led choose obedience. And it's in this territory, the space between it hasn't happened yet, and it's already prepared, that God does his most powerful work. Because God's silence is not absence, it's architecture. It's as though he is working behind the scenes of your destiny, arranging every piece, every door, every resource, every person, every movement. until everything meets in the exact moment when purpose reveals itself without effort. And maybe you didn't notice it, but some people were removed to make room for what truly belongs to you. Some doors were closed so you wouldn't enter places that would destroy your calling. Delays happened so you would arrive aligned with the right time. Discomfort rose so you would shed layers that don't fit what God prepared. Yes, you are being shaped. But more than shaped, you are being repositioned. Heaven isn't just reorganizing your life, it's reorganizing you for the life that's coming. And here's a strong truth people rarely say, but you need to hear. Destiny does not align with haste, but it also refuses to align with comfort. So, declare this with me now. With awareness and firmness, I leave behind everything that does not prepare me for what God wrote for me. I walk toward what has been aligned in heaven, not what feels comfortable on earth. I am ready for what belongs to me, and what belongs to me is coming in my direction. Now breathe deeply. Feel it. It's as if invisible layers are being removed, as if a spiritual weight is lifting off your shoulders, as if the unseen realm is whispering, keep going. You're entering the zone where miracles become routine. Sometimes something begins to happen inside you before it ever happens around you. It's as if your spirit receives the news first, as if heaven whispers an announcement that earth hasn't heard yet. And you notice it in the smallest things, in the way your heart responds to things that used to exhaust you, in how certain thoughts suddenly lose their power, in how some people no longer have access to your inner world. In the unexpected clarity that shows up in random moments of the day. It's a sign, it's movement, it's transition. And spiritual transitions are never smooth, because they are invitations to levels you've never walked in before. It's as if God is saying, I need you to come higher, because what I'm preparing doesn't match the ground you're standing on. And maybe that's exactly what you've been feeling, a holy restlessness, an internal shift, a quiet breaking that no one sees but you feel. This isn't anxiety, this is expansion. And here's what the Spirit is showing me right now. You're not losing anything, you're being set apart. Set apart from environments that limited your vision. Set apart from voices that drained your faith. Set apart from paths that would pull you away from destiny. Set apart from versions of yourself that no longer fit your next season. God isn't just opening doors, He's shaping you so you can walk through them. Because spiritual doors don't open only for those who ask. They open for those who can carry the weight of what's on the other side. And maybe that's the reason you've felt a different kind of pressure lately. It's not attack, it's preparation. It's not resistance, it's adjustment. It's not chaos, it's order. It's not delay, it's alignment. Heaven is replacing your internal tools, changing mindsets, changing perception, changing posture, sharpening spiritual sensitivity. With every change, you stop reacting like someone who merely survives, and you start moving like someone who carries assignment. So now, before we go on, I want you to declare this with authority. I accept the process that prepares me for what God has already released. I leave what is old to enter what is definitive. I say yes to heaven's alignment over my life. Sit with that for a few seconds. It's strong, it's real, it's spiritual. Now pay attention, because this needs to enter your awareness. You're not just stepping into something new. You are part of something heaven is moving on the earth. And when you're part of a move of heaven, nothing in your life stays ordinary. Conversations shift, environments shift, priorities shift, discernment sharpens, the spirit awakens, cycles close, doors begin to respond, and that invisible adjustment is exactly what's happening to you. If you're feeling this even slightly, write in the comments right now. I recognize heaven's movement in my life. This seals in the spirit what you are sensing in your soul. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. Not for the algorithm, but because purpose recognizes purpose. And the environment where you feed your spirit shapes the environment where you will walk. There are moments in life when something erupts in the spirit before it ever appears on the earth. It's as if God begins to shift foundations, exchange spiritual plates, realign frequencies. So you still can't see it with your natural eyes. But deep inside, something already knows. I'm being moved. And maybe that's exactly where you are right now. Not at the beginning, not at the end, but in that strange territory where nothing seems to make sense, and yet everything feels like it's pointing to something greater. This kind of phase is not random. It's strategic. It's when God does what no human eye can see. It's when He changes your internal garments. It's when He awakens parts of you that have been dormant since before you were formed. And that leads me to something deep. You are being repositioned on the spiritual map. It doesn't matter where you are physically. It doesn't matter how you feel emotionally. It doesn't matter how chaotic things look around you. When heaven redefines your position, everything around you responds, even the things that have been stuck for years. Some things didn't move in your life not because you were in the wrong place, but because you were in the right place wearing the wrong version of yourself. Now God is aligning versions and positions at the same time. Pay attention. That's why certain people began drifting away without explanation. That's why you suddenly lost the desire to insist on places you once longed to enter. That's why some doors closed before you could walk through them. It wasn't rejection, it was preservation. Because you cannot be positioned where you were not designed to exist. And God knows exactly where every piece of your destiny belongs. Now hear this. When God changes your internal position, He also changes your root. And when He changes your root, He changes your harvest. There are paths you have never accessed because they only open for those who carry the right weight of identity. And that is what is being activated inside you right now. So before we continue, declare this, truly, with intention. I align myself with the destiny God designed for me. My internal roots adjust to heaven's purpose. I allow myself to be moved to the place God wants to establish me. Now breathe deeply, because what comes next is a spiritual key. Have you noticed that some doors don't open when you knock? They open when you change? Heaven responds to versions, not to hurry. That's why many people pray and nothing shifts. They're asking as their old version. But when the new version awakens, even old doors respond. And that is exactly what's happening to you. You're about to walk into environments where your old version wouldn't survive. Environments of expansion. Environments of release. Environments of opportunity. Environments that demand spiritual, emotional, and mental maturity. This transition is not destruction, it's construction. It's heaven shaping you, so you won't lose what He's about to place in your hands. Now, before we move on, write in the comments something that seals this phase. I accept the version God is awakening in me. Maybe you haven't fully noticed it yet, but there is a shift happening inside you. It's not intellectual, it's not emotional, it's spiritual. And when the spirit moves first, everything around you starts responding as if a new code had been activated. You begin to look at old situations and realize they no longer carry the same weight. Things that once held you now no longer make sense. Environments that once felt comfortable now feel too tight. Conversations that once fed you now sound empty. This is not crisis. This is evolution. When God prepares someone to carry something greater, He removes everything that was compressing their identity. It's like shedding the skin of one season for one that actually fits the new cycle. And here is a deep revelation. You're not just leaving a season, you are being pulled into a purpose. And being pulled by God has nothing to do with speed. It has everything to do with direction. That's why some recent delays were not delays at all. They were redirections. Open your mind wide to this now. If God had allowed certain things to happen earlier, they would have destroyed you, not promoted you. He protected your path when you thought you were being blocked. He closed doors you begged Him to open. He removed people you were sure you needed. He silenced environments where you thought you still had a voice, because you cannot enter new territories while carrying old weights. And maybe that's exactly where you are right now, at the point where your soul feels like it's losing something, but your spirit knows it's gaining room. Hear this. When God expands the soul, He often shrinks the scenery, so you don't confuse people with purpose. This is the kind of movement only those who are being prepared can understand. And if this is resonating inside you right now, declare without fear as you listen, I accept the inner construction God is doing in me. Feel the weight of that, because that kind of acceptance opens doors no amount of effort could ever open. There comes a moment in the spiritual journey when God doesn't just call you, He sets you apart. And that separation doesn't look glamorous. It feels like rupture. It feels like displacement. Sometimes it feels like loneliness. But it's the kind of loneliness that prepares kings, not victims. It's in this territory that you begin to notice the difference between external movement and internal movement. The external impresses. The internal transforms. And that's exactly what God is doing in you now. He is transforming the layer no one sees, so you can carry what everyone will eventually see. And maybe you've been living the signs of this transition without even realizing it. Your sensitivity has increased. Your discernment has sharpened. Your patience for things you once tolerated has dissolved. Your soul has begun rejecting places that can no longer hold your next version. You feel as if everything is shifting, even while you stand still. This is not instability, this is preparation. Because when God is about to hand you something great, He first separates you from what is small. He clears the field before He plants. He silences the environment before He gives new instructions. He removes old voices so you can hear His voice without interference. And there's more. Some of the shifts you've been feeling recently were spiritual, not emotional. You thought you were just tired of certain routines. But in reality, God was pulling you out of cycles that were draining you without your awareness. Heaven is repositioning you so you can see life from a different angle. And when your vision changes, your destiny changes with it. Now take a deep breath. Let your awareness catch up to what is happening inside you right this moment. Because something is being unlocked as you hear this episode. And to activate this in your spirit, declare now, with intention, with truth, with presence, I accept the shift that leads me into the center of God's will. Again, but deeper. I release what was old and make room for what is new. And now declare this as a decree. Heaven is repositioning me, and I accept the movement. Let those words echo within you, because every spiritual transition is built with two voices, God's voice and your agreement. Some of the greatest spiritual turning points in your life don't begin with a yes, they begin with discomfort. It's the discomfort that reveals that something inside you no longer fits where you've been. It's as if your soul is growing before you even notice it. The silent growth is a signature of God. He expands you inside before He expands your life outside. He stretches your capacity before He gives you new territory. He strengthens you in the invisible before He exposes you to the visible. And that explains why certain paths that once looked big now feel small. Why conversations that once made sense now leave you restless. Why dreams you used to crave no longer ignite you. It's not ingratitude, it's evolution. Your spirit is growing faster than your current reality, and that can only mean one thing. You are being prepared to access a dimension your old version could not carry. It's like changing the container before pouring the wine. Like reinforcing the foundation before raising the building. Like tuning the instrument before releasing the sound. And maybe that's exactly what you're feeling. A pressure that doesn't destroy you, it shapes you. A restlessness that doesn't confuse you, it pushes you. An expectation that doesn't come from you, it comes from God. Because every breakthrough begins with that inner awareness that something is about to shift. And it is. But before that shift shows up in the natural world, you must take a posture in the spiritual one. You must respond to what heaven is doing. Breathe deeply and become aware. Not just with your mind, but with your spirit. The environment around you is being reorganized. Pieces are being relocated, delays are being removed, detours are being corrected, blockages are losing strength. Because God doesn't move you to shake you, He moves you to position you. Now make a declaration that aligns your inner world with what is already moving around you. I do not resist God's shift. I move with Him. Again, deeper, as someone who truly understands. I allow my route to be rewritten by heaven's vision. And now, declare the sentence that seals this spiritual atmosphere. I am ready to occupy what has been prepared for me. Feel it. This kind of declaration is not just spoken word, it is territory claimed. And if you want to seal this moment in the spirit, write in the comments, I move with heaven, not with fear. Writing is declaring. Declaring is establishing. Establishing is taking possession. There are seasons when heaven begins to move pieces you didn't even know were part of the board of your life. It's not an obvious movement. It's not a loud, dramatic change. It's the kind of intervention you only recognize when you look back and say, that was God. There's no other explanation. And maybe you're standing in exactly that spiritual territory right now. Because there are transitions that don't begin on earth. They begin in the spirit. And the spirit always perceives it first. That's why you've been feeling a kind of internal displacement. As if something is shifting, but you still can't name it. As if doors are about to open, but you don't yet know where they are. As if a force is pushing you forward, even when nothing around you seems different. That's the sign. Heaven is synchronizing you with what was prepared for this phase. Yes, synchronizing. Because it's not enough for God to release something. You must be in the right rhythm to enter it. Maybe that's what has been happening to you these past few days. Things that once held you began losing their grip. Memories that paralyzed you started fading, old fears began shrinking. Internal voices of doubt lost their volume, even your desires have changed. None of this is coincidence. It's adjustment. It's alignment. It's spiritual preparation. You are being drawn closer to what has always been yours, but could only arrive once you became who you needed to be. Understand this, God never gives something great to someone who still thinks small. He expands the mind first, then the path. He strengthens the faith first, then the responsibility. He adjusts the spirit first, then the schedule. And you are in that process right now. It shouldn't scare you. It should encourage you. Because only those who will carry something that transforms not just their own life, but the lives of others, go through this kind of realignment. Now, let this sink in. Some spiritual doors are coming toward you because your frequency has shifted. This isn't motivational language. It's spiritual reality. When your inner frequency changes, the right connections start appearing out of nowhere. Silent opportunities begin to notice you, environments start recognizing you. Paths reveal themselves, instructions become clearer, the invisible begins moving in your favor. You are not chasing. You are being drawn. So now, make a declaration that creates space for what's coming. I become compatible with the destiny heaven wrote for me. Now declare a second one, deeper. I release the old and embrace the new without resistance. And a third. To seal this moment, from today on, I walk in the frequency of my promise. There are movements that begin long before you understand them, but they always arrive at the exact moment you're ready to receive them. And this kind of movement doesn't make noise when it's born, only when it manifests. Maybe you're noticing it now, a clarity that doesn't come from reflection, but from revelation. A peace that doesn't come from circumstances, but from alignment. A strength that doesn't come from effort, but from purpose. This is the sign that heaven is leading you on the inside before leading you on the outside. Because before God shifts a season, He shifts your inner world so you don't waste the opportunity when it arrives. And if you look closely, you'll notice something has already begun. The voices that once confused you have grown quieter. The fears you carried have lost their footing. The doubts that surrounded you have lost authority. The insecurities have lost their control. And even the scenarios that once intimidated you no longer hold the same power over you. This is internal repositioning, God spiritually highlighting you so you can see from a different angle. Because no one enters a new territory with the mindset of the previous season. Do you notice it? What once seemed too big for you now feels reachable. And what once seemed too small for you no longer fits. This shift in perception isn't psychological, it's prophetic. When God changes your understanding, He's revealing your true proportion. This is why, even though nothing has changed around you, you no longer feel like you're in the same season. This is spiritual maturity being born. This is internal capacity rising. This is silent expansion happening. And every silent expansion precedes a public manifestation. Now pause for a moment and let this phrase settle inside you. God is already positioning you in places where your feet haven't stepped yet. This is the dimension you're entering now. The dimension where things begin to align without human effort. Where connections arrive without you searching. Where opportunities approach without you chasing. Where answers come without you begging. Where doors open without you forcing anything. Because when heaven gets involved, earth responds. And before we continue, declare this, not like someone reciting words, but like someone taking a spiritual stance. I receive the alignment heaven is creating inside me. Now say it deeper, to activate your spirit. I accept being led into places I've never been. And a third one, to seal this moment with authority. Whatever God is moving in my favor, I will not resist. I will flow. If this word touched something inside you, write in the comments. I choose to flow with heaven's movement. This isn't just a comment, it's positioning. There are seasons in life when it feels like you're being placed in front of an invisible mirror. Not a mirror that shows who you are today, but one that reveals who you are becoming. And it's in this contrast that God speaks the loudest. Because when He starts revealing the future version of you inside your present version, everything that is misaligned begins to feel uncomfortable. The discomfort is not failure. It's evidence of growth. It's as if your spirit begins to say, this no longer fits me. This cycle can't sustain who I've become. This mindset no longer matches who I am. And when you start noticing this, it's not because you're lost, it's because you're being found. Found on a deeper level. Found in an identity that was asleep. Found by a calling that was waiting for your emotional and spiritual maturity. And this process never begins with clarity. It begins with discomfort. Discomfort is the warning that something is being adjusted. Discomfort is the signal that the time has shifted. Discomfort is the sign that your old shape no longer fits your new measure. Let this settle in. When God wants to expand your influence, He first breaks your internal limits. You feel enlargement before you see advancement. You feel displacement before you see doors. You feel change before you see opportunity. And this feeling you're carrying, this mix of expectation and strangeness, is exactly the signature of this phase. Because you're leaving a season where everything made sense, to enter a season where everything will have purpose. And purpose is always greater than sense. That's why some things recently seem disconnected, as if each piece were isolated. But listen carefully. Heaven never works with loose pieces, only with pieces that haven't been revealed yet. Some encounters you had in the past months weren't coincidence. They were movements. Some invitations that appeared out of nowhere weren't random. They were signs. Some doors that opened effortlessly weren't luck. They were divine strategy. And even the silence you had to face wasn't absence. It was alignment. Because heaven speaks to your story in a way you only understand later. Now, pay very close attention. You are stepping into a time where what you carry will begin to pull you, as if the promise itself were drawing you into it. And when that happens, nothing can stop the advance. Not people, not circumstances, not resistance, not delay. This is why you're feeling this invisible acceleration, because the future is calling you by name. Before we continue, declare this over yourself. With awareness, I become compatible with the future God wrote for me. Deeper. I leave behind every version that cannot sustain my destiny. And now, the declaration that opens spiritual portals. I access what was prepared long before I existed. Feel this. Breathe this. Let your spirit recognize what's moving. And if this word touched your soul in a precise way, write in the comments, I accept the version heaven awakened in me. This isn't just a comment. It's a prophetic act. Sometimes, before God releases something new, He begins by reorganizing your perception, not the world around you, but your sense of direction. It's as if He changes the compass while you're walking, and suddenly, the north you were following no longer points where it used to. And yes, this can confuse you for a moment, but this confusion is not chaos, it's realignment. Because when God is shifting you into a territory where purpose speaks louder than logic, your old navigation system stops working. You cannot reach the next destination using the map from the previous season. That's why so much started losing meaning. That's why your soul longs for something you still can't name. That's why you feel almost there even without knowing where there is. This is the clearest sign that heaven is moving inner layers. And when those layers move, nothing outside remains the same. Maybe you've noticed. Everything that once distracted you has lost its grip. Everything that once held you has lost its flavor. Everything that once limited you has lost its authority. You didn't change alone. God pulled you to another level. And that level demands a different posture, a different vision, a different inner sound. There is a moment in the spiritual process when God stops speaking to you as someone who is still learning and starts speaking to you as someone who is finally ready. That's what is happening right now. You're not hearing this message as someone who needs persuasion, but as someone who is being activated. And when God activates someone, He touches what seems small but carries enormous implications. He adjusts your inner rhythm, your spiritual sensitivity, your ability to sense invisible movement. You may not have seen it yet, but heaven has already begun accelerating your story. And God's acceleration does not begin when things happen. It begins when you change on the inside. So declare this now, and declare it as someone who understands they are being repositioned. What was dormant inside me awakens now. I step into the path my soul recognizes, even if my eyes don't see it yet. I align with heaven's rhythm and let it order my steps. Feel this. Something is clicking into place inside you right this moment. Something finding shape, finding direction, finding breath. There are transitions in life that do not announce themselves. They simply begin. You don't see the first shift. You don't notice the first signal. But suddenly, something inside you knows the season has changed, even before any evidence appears. It's as if your spirit is one step ahead of your soul. And when that happens, the feeling is not stable. It's like walking on ground that didn't exist yesterday, but today begins forming under your feet. It's like being pushed toward a place you've never seen, yet somehow sensing you've always belonged there. This is the mark of the final stage before manifestation, the internal recognition of a destiny that has not yet revealed itself. And maybe that's exactly what you're living right now. You can't explain it, but you know. You can't prove it, but you perceive it. You can't describe it, but you feel it. Something has shifted in the invisible, and you're simply trying to keep up. And here's the deepest truth. You're not being invited into this new time. You're being summoned. Those who are summoned don't ask if they're ready, they respond. Those who are summoned don't wait to understand, they obey. Those who are summoned don't calculate, they advance. And the reason you're hearing this now is simple. Heaven is calling you into a cycle where your old version no longer fits. Tell me if this resonates. Things that once filled your mind no longer have space. The anxiety that followed you for years has lost its strength. The worry that drained you has lost its authority. The emotional pattern that held you back has lost its place. God is clearing the surface of your soul so you can carry what comes next. And do you know the clearest sign of that? Silence. Not the silence of absence, the silence of construction. It's the same silence that precedes a major turning point. The same silence that precedes a major answer. The same silence that precedes a major release. It's the silence where God makes no noise, because he's working on things too deep to reveal before the right time. Breathe. Now declare this with real intention. I come into agreement with what heaven is building in the silence. Now deeper. I will not sabotage the process that leads me to my harvest. And a third, the one that establishes territory. What God has initiated in me, no one will be able to interrupt. Feel that echo inside you, because every declaration you make is not just a word, it's an internal movement, a shift in frequency, a shift in direction, a shift in identity. Before we continue, leave a spiritual mark in the comments. I align myself with what God builds in the silence. This comment seals what is being born. Something behind the scenes of your story has begun to move with a force you still can't measure. It's not emotion, it's not imagination. It's spiritual perception, the kind that awakens long before the mind understands. Because when God decides to shift someone's path, nothing happens suddenly. It happens silently. And that silence carries a weight only those being prepared can feel. It's a silence that interrupts old internal conversations. A silence that disrupts patterns you didn't even know you had. A silence that distances you from people who cannot fit into the next chapter. A silence that reorganizes emotions, priorities, and inner environments. And maybe that's what you're living right now. A strange emptiness. A separation that makes no sense. A restlessness you can't explain. But that is the divine signature. God reorganizing your inner world before he reorganizes your outer one. And here is something few understand. Manifestation doesn't begin when doors open. Manifestation begins when heaven adjusts your steps. Before the harvest comes into your hands, God aligns the ground you will walk on. Before the promise appears in the natural, he positions your soul to sustain what comes after. And if your inner environment wasn't being treated, you would waste what you prayed for. Not because you're incapable, but because you wouldn't be shaped to receive it. But you are going through a kind of molding that few ever reach. The molding of the chosen. The chosen don't live quick answers, they live deep processes. The chosen don't just receive miracles, they receive movements. The chosen don't carry only blessings, they carry purpose. And this is the moment where God takes your story in his hands and says, now this is where you step. Even if you don't see a road. Even if you don't see direction. Even if you don't see clarity. Because when heaven rewrites your steps, he doesn't show you the map. He shows you the first movement. And it's that movement that changes everything. Now declare this with the consciousness of someone who is being repositioned. I accept the route heaven has defined for me. I do not return to places God has already closed. My steps belong to heaven, not to my past. Feel this enter your inner atmosphere. Feel this truth touching the places where you stored fear, insecurity, and old memories. There are moments when life enters a strange mode. It's not war, it's not peace, it's not loss, it's not gain, it's an interval. And very few people understand that this interval isn't a pause, it's an invisible promotion. You know when a theater is about to change the entire stage set, and for a few seconds the curtain closes? From the audience, it looks like nothing but darkness. But behind the curtain, people are running, lights are shifting position, platforms are turning, props are being removed, others being placed. Everything is being reorganized at a speed no one sees. That's exactly how heaven is moving your story right now, with the curtain closed. That's why some things went silent. That's why certain expectations collapsed. That's why your routine lost flavor and certain environments lost their fit. It's not lack, it's substitution. You're not being dismantled. You're being repositioned in a way your old version could never sustain. Because when God is preparing a major alignment, He rearranges the stage first, then He rearranges you, and only then does He reveal the final scene. And there is something very specific happening right now. Heaven is removing people, conversations, and even old certainties from your path because you're about to step into a spiritual position that those structures cannot accompany. Notice this. Has your sensitivity increased? Has your tolerance decreased? Has your sense of purpose sharpened? Do small things tire you faster? Has the feeling of I don't belong here anymore grown stronger? This isn't crisis. This is elevation of spiritual consciousness. It's God tuning you to His next frequency. And here's something more. A cycle that held back your expansion was broken a few days ago. And you didn't perceive it because the breaking began in the spirit before touching the natural. But you're already feeling the ripple. And you'll notice even more in the coming days. Now declare with authority to seal what is being activated. I step into the new stage heaven has set for me. No old structure will have the power to hold me. And one more. To activate your spiritual path, what was reorganized in silence will become a public victory. And to mark this shift in the spiritual records, write in the comments, my stage is changing and I am ready to step in. There are moves of God that don't arrive as answers. They arrive as displacement. They don't explain, they don't justify, they don't ask permission, they simply push you away from everything that kept you too small for the purpose that was coming. And this displacement begins like this. You try to force the fit, and it doesn't fit. You try to recover the motivation, and it doesn't return. You try to make things work like before, but before no longer exists. Because when God decides to shift someone to a new level, He doesn't start by removing things from the outside. He starts by removing internal permissions. He takes away your authorization to stay where your spirit no longer fits. And that's why recently some doors that always answered went silent. Some relationships that felt natural became heavy. Some certainties that once felt solid became hollow. This isn't failure. This is upgrade. You're being summoned into a position that your old version could never sustain. Notice, every real growth carries a sacred discomfort. It's not the pain of ending, it's the pain of beginning. It's not collapse, it's expansion. It's not loss, it's preparation. And God is preparing something specific. A meeting between who you already became on the inside and what has not yet manifested on the outside. That's why you feel this invisible pull. It's your spirit running ahead. It's your destiny calling your name. It's purpose doing what purpose always does right before it's born, reorganizing everything. Now take a deep breath and declare with firmness, I walk toward what is already waiting for me. What God activated inside me will manifest without delay. When the kingdom decides to alter someone's path, the shift almost never starts on the outside. It begins in the invisible, in a restlessness, in an impulse you can't explain, in that subtle sense that something bigger is about to happen. That's not anxiety, that is spiritual summons. It's as if God were saying, stop staring at what looks still, and pay attention to what is being synchronized. Because when heaven wants to reveal something weighty, it begins by removing everything that makes noise. And maybe you haven't noticed it fully, but in the last few days, people started showing who they really are. Not to wound you, but to free you. Plans that once seemed certain began to fall apart. Not to delay you, but to reposition you. What once motivated you suddenly lost its shine, not because of discouragement, but because your soul refuses to negotiate with the shallow. This isn't chaos, this is alignment. God is disconnecting you from outdated versions of your own story. You're not regressing. You're being refined. You're not alone. You're being set apart. You're not losing. You're being prepared. Notice something profound. Every time God shakes the foundation, He is announcing that He is about to move the top. Every time God shifts the internal, He is preparing to shift the external. Every time God rearranges the structure, it's because glory weight is approaching. That's why, behind the scenes of your life, there is a reorganization you can't see, but you can feel. This spiritual pressure is a sign. The stage is expanding to carry what you are carrying. And now you will declare, with a firm voice, as someone taking your place in the spiritual realm, I do not resist the movement of God. I align with it. What looked like confusion is actually the path being adjusted for me. And now, do something essential to seal this moment. Comment below. I step into the divine alignment of my purpose. There are moments when everything inside you feels like a kind of internal shift. But it's not confusion, it's spiritual promotion. It's as if your spirit were being pulled into a level your feet haven't reached yet, but have already been summoned to. And when that happens, don't try to understand it with the natural mind, because God's movements never begin with logic. They always begin in the kingdom. You know that silent awareness that you can't stay where you are anymore? That sense that no matter how much you try to fit in, something bigger is calling you? That's not imagination. That's divine signature. It is God shifting your internal frequency before He shifts your external geography. And movements like this are never comfortable. They disrupt routines, they shake structures, they demand surrender. They force choices you would probably never make on your own. Because the kingdom always reorders before it reveals. Heaven never expands someone without first adjusting the ground where that person will walk. And maybe you're hearing this right in the middle of this invisible displacement, where nothing seems to make sense, yet everything is being realigned. Where doors feel slow, but your spirit feels fast. Where people drift away without explanation, but purpose comes closer without asking permission. Where old cycles begin to unravel, not because you failed, but because you grew. Now, take a deep breath and declare with me, with a firm voice, activating the spiritual atmosphere around you. I accept the movement heaven is creating within me. I release what cannot accompany my next level. I walk in the rhythm of purpose, not the rhythm of hurry. I advance toward the path God has redesigned for me. I align myself with what was built in silence and prepared to emerge. There are moments in life when something begins to move inside you long before you have language to explain it. It's not emotion. It's not adrenaline. It's not human expectation. It feels like a tectonic plate in your spirit shifting. And suddenly you realize you're no longer in the same place internally. Maybe that's exactly what is happening to you right now. Not because someone promised it, not because you imagined it, but because heaven decided to adjust something in your structure. Pay attention to what you feel inside. A certain weight lifting, a clarity rising, an alignment you didn't have yesterday, a courage you didn't know you carried, a sense of purpose that depends on nothing external. This is not coincidence. This is a calling. When God sees that someone is ready, even without understanding, He begins to reorganize everything. Not through force, but through attraction. Not through pressure, but through invitation. Not through desperation, but through silent preparation. It's as if God were saying to your spirit right now, I didn't bring you here to inform you. I brought you here to transform you. Maybe you carry questions no one has ever answered. Maybe you fight internal battles no one has ever imagined. Maybe you moved forward in fear or stopped because of exhaustion. But none of this changes the fact that God kept you standing. And God never does that without purpose. The kingdom does not move by accident. The kingdom moves by design. And if you are hearing this right now, it's not because the right time finally arrived. It's because the right version of you arrived. The version that finally lets go of what once held you back. The version that can carry truth without collapsing. The version strong enough for the level of vision God is releasing. The version that no longer runs from what you were born to carry. The version that no longer negotiates your calling. Now breathe, because there is a sentence you need to declare to activate what is happening inside you. I allow God to finish what He started inside of me. Declare it as someone unlocking territory. Declare it as someone breaking a cycle. Declare it as someone who understands that God's movement within you always precedes God's movement around you. Before we pray, do something simple, yet profoundly spiritual. Breathe, slowly. Release the air. Feel your mind slowing down, your spirit becoming more aware, and your soul creating space to receive. Because what is about to happen now is not an ordinary prayer. It is not a closing moment. It is not a ritual. It is a transition point. There are moments when heaven does not ask for silence, it asks for surrender. Moments when God does not increase his volume, he increases revelation. And this is one of those moments. Everything you've heard until now has been moving inside you. But this is the instant when spiritual pieces begin to align, and everything that was stuck, blocked, hidden, or asleep begins its process of release. The prayer you are about to hear is being built not only with words, but with an anointing that pushes your spirit straight into your true destiny. So, if you can, place your hand over your chest, feel your heartbeat, and allow this prayer to cross every place that human words were never able to reach. Now, let's step in. Eternal God, let your breath touch every area of this life that needs realignment. Let every part of their inner world be visited by the light that dismantles lies. Break cycles and tears down everything that rose against their purpose. Let every heavy atmosphere be shattered. Let every imprisoned thought be released. Let every spiritual lie be silenced. And let every truth that comes from above become alive, clear, and non-negotiable. Let the invisible force of your kingdom enter this atmosphere and place order where there was chaos, clarity where there were doubts, discernment where there was confusion, and direction where there was paralysis. Align this person's heart now with the destiny that carried their name before they ever existed. Let their steps fall into the right rhythm. Let their spirit rise above anxiety. And let their inner eyes see what the natural world cannot reveal. Remove every emotional chain. Cut every spiritual tie. Strip every contrary word of its power. Silence every voice that does not come from your purpose with authority. Let every pattern that used to repeat end. Let everything that drained their strength cease. Let every injustice be repaired. Let everything that was stolen be restored. Let everything that was delayed be accelerated. And now, let what was hidden begin to appear. Let what was closed begin to open. Let what was distant begin to draw near. Let what was stuck begin to flow. Let this person's spirit come into agreement with what heaven has already decided. They are not orphaned, not lost, not small, not late. They are chosen. They are set apart. They are marked to carry what many will never comprehend. Activate gifts that were asleep. Unlock ideas that were restrained. Awaken vision that was clouded. Release courage where fear once lived. Establish authority where insecurity stood. And let every opposing spiritual atmosphere be expelled from this inner territory. Let no force of darkness have permanence, influence, or cycle. Let no pattern of scarcity have legal right. Let no spirit of delay have a voice. Let no shadow have power. Let the light of your kingdom fill every space. And let the impossible begin to bow before your decree. I prophesy over this life that invisible doors begin to open, that strategic connections appear out of nowhere, that resources find their way to them, that opportunities locate them, that favor follows them, that what seemed lost returns in glory, and that everything birthed in the spirit begins to take form in the natural. I release advancement. I release strength. I release courage. I release breakthrough. I release clarity. I release direction. I release vision. I release acceleration. And I declare that nothing, absolutely nothing, will stop what heaven has already decided to release. So it is done, so it will be seen. Amen, amen, amen. If this prayer touched something deep inside you, write in the comments. I access what God has already prepared for me. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. Not for numbers, but because this space was created for your spiritual advancement. Here you will be built, activated, aligned, and repositioned, episode after episode. May the favor of the kingdom walk ahead of you, and may everything God started inside you today begin to become visible in the days to come. I bless you. Go in peace, and go in power.